Hey guys, I have a fun activity for you today. It's color mode. It expands upon what we talked about the other day. We're going to be dealing with solid colors, gradient fills, detail layers, and I'm going to explain color modes again. So stick with me, should be fun. Go ahead and open up Photoshop, please. Alright, so there's two files you're going to need to get from Schoology. The first one is the fish right here. It's just a simple illustration of some fish from a coloring book. And the second is a underwater scene called Reef. So I'm going to open up the fish first. All right, when I open it up, you'll notice, look at the layer panel, it says index. So if you remember from the last video, I talked about different color modes. Primarily, we work with RGB in Photoshop. That's your mixture of your reds, your greens, and blues. So we need to get back to that. So right now, I'm stuck in index color mode, and I can't really do much with it. So let me go back to RGB. You'll see you get your normal background layer there, and then we're going to unlock it. All right, so once we do, I want to get rid of the white background behind the fish. And I'm simply going to get my magic wand tool right there. And let me try a tolerance right there of 15, 1.5. So magic wand's fourth button down, 15 for my tolerance. I'm going to click on the background right there. That selects all the white in the back. And today we're just going to hit the delete on the keyboard just because I want our focus to be on color and I don't want you to get too confused with masking yet. But going forward, we're never going to use the delete on the keyboard, but for this activity, we'll do it. All right, so we have our fish isolated, and you can see the checkerboard pattern indicating a transparent background, but we have everything on one layer, and I want the fish to be independent of each other. So we're going to cut them off this layer and place them on a different layer. So let's use our third button down. So get your lasso tool right there. And once you have your lasso tool, go ahead and trace around the outside of this fish right here. One on the right, the little fish. And you'll see it makes a selection. And in order to put this on its own independent layer, I'm going to go to Layer on the menu bar. I'm going to go to New, and I'm going to choose Layer via Cut, last sub option. And when I do, you'll see it places it on its own layer, and it's no longer on this one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer Little Fish, and go back to my original layer because I want to cut this next fish out, and I can't do it if I have Little Fish selected. So get your third button down. I'm going to trace around the big fish the best I can. All right, so I traced around the big fish, same process as before. I go to Layer on the menu bar, New, Layer via Cut right there. And I'm going to call this Big Fish. And I need to go back to the original layer where these plants are located, and I'm going to cut those out. You'll start to realize if you're not using your external mouse, you probably should be because things are becoming more difficult. And using that trackpad is kind of tough. So Layer via Cut is what I want. Puts this on its own layer. I'm going to call it Plant Left. And I'm going to do so with the plant on the right. So I need to go back to the original layer, have that tool, go ahead and cut this one out. I'm going to go to Layer, New, Bottom Option, and this is going to be called Plant Right. Okay, that's Plant Right. Now, I don't need to cut the bubbles out because bubbles are the only thing left on this layer, so I simply need to rename it. All right, so I have 5 layers at this point, looking pretty good, and I can move these around independently of each other because they're on their own layers. All right, so let's bring some color to these. So I want you to go ahead and select the Little Fish layer. Go ahead and select the Little Fish layer. And we're going to fill the little fish with varying colors. And I'm going to use my color picker right there. So I'm going to get into my purple and I'll get my paint bucket right there in the middle. Same spot as the gradient tool. And I'm going to go through this fish and just color the fish randomly. I'm going to go teals. I'm going to drop my tolerance a little bit right there. The reason I did that, I saw some of these were filling into the black a little bit too much. And when you reduce your tolerance, it stays more in the white as opposed to jumping to the black too. You get some reds and yellows. All right, so that's my little fish. I'm going to go to my big fish and I'm going to color the big fish. And we'll go with those. And let's get something else. Do that. All right, so we got the fish. Let's go ahead and plant left. I'm going to fill the plant on the left. So. And the same thing on the right. Oops, I better select the correct layer because that filled in everything else. Alright, I just remembered I gotta fix something here. So go through and fill this the best we can. I'm not gonna fill these two spots. Well, I'll show you what'll go wrong when I do. If I was to put up color in there where it had erased it, it's gonna fill my whole screen. And the reason it did that is the color's escaping because there's no black line down there. So let me go ahead and get my paintbrush brush tool. I want a size 4, so make sure it's size 4. And you have to reset your foreground colors to black and white. So that's this little button right there. Click that and make sure black's on the top. If it's not, hit the double-ended arrow so it is. So now the only thing I need to do, and it's going to have to be the plant right layer, is I need to paint a line right there to fill that in and paint a black line to fill that in. So that keeps the color from escaping. Now I can get my paint bucket and fill in that spot. Oops, wrong color. I thought I picked. There you go. All right, so that keeps my color from escaping. And last thing I want to color are the bubbles. So let me just get, we'll go dark blue. Gonna fill my bubbles. All right, so I have that. Let's bring in the reef image to put place behind. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. And I'm going to go to my desktop, Chapter 5. That's where I put it, and there should be a reef right there. And place. Size that up. Alright, so I have my underwater fish scene with solid color fish. So that's the first part. So go ahead and save this file as fish solid. So I'm going to make sure it's in my desktop folder, 2020 fall, this class, chapter 5, and we're going to call it fish solid. And hit save, and okay. All right, so that's that file. Go ahead and close this one, and then we're going to go ahead and bring this same one open again. You can see right over here, I just went through this tutorial once, and then I had an error with my video camera, so now I'm doing it for the second time for y'all. So let's go ahead and open up this, and we're going to go through the same process we did previously. So right there we see index. Let's change the color mode, so image mode, let's go to RGB, and unlock the background layer. And we're going to get rid of the white background. So I got my magic wand, I'm going to click on it and delete, and then Command D to deselect it. We're going to go through the same process of isolating the fish. So I have my lasso tool. I'm going to trace around the little fish right here. All right, go to layer, new, via cut, and call this little fish. Okay, that's one. I'm going back to my original layer. I'm going to get the big fish, so I'm going to go right here. And I've got the big fish. And now I'm going to go to layer on the menu bar, new, layer by cut, and I'm going to call this big fish. All right, so now our big fish. Let's go back to the original layer. Let's select the plant on the left. So I've got my lasso tool. I'm going around. I'm going to layer on the menu bar, new, layer by cut, and we'll call this plant left. So double click that, plant left. Back to the original layer. Lasso tool, let's fill this, or not fill it, let's cut it. Thinking ahead. All right, layer, new, by cut, and that's gonna be plant right. And just like before, the last thing left on this layer are the bubbles, so just rename it bubbles. All right, so before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm gonna select the plant right and paint in those, the bottom part of that plant. So I'm gonna get my paintbrush, go ahead and paint across, whoops, wrong color. Reset to black and white, paint with black, and black there. Good, and let's fill it in with white. So flip your colors around with a double-ended arrow, get your paint bucket and dump there, there, and there. That's a little too much. All right, so plant right is collected, or corrected. All right, so this is where it's going to be a little different than the solid color fill because we're going to pull gradients across the fish, and I'll show you why we're going to have to take an extra step here to provide detail on each one of the fish. So go ahead and select the little fish first, and we're going to right-click that layer. So right-click the layer and choose Duplicate Layer, and it's going to make a copy, but we want to, instead of having it be called Little Fish Copy, we're going to have it called Little Fish Detail, and I hit OK. All right. So there's two layers. Little Fish is on the bottom, Little Fish Detail is on the top, and that's the orientation we want. We want the detail layer to be directly above the regular layer. So I'm going to hold Shift with my left hand, and these two layers are now selected. Now go up here to the layer menu button right there and choose New Group from Layers, and we're going to call this Little Fish. And we're going to give it a color. We'll give it orange. All right, and you'll see both of our layers are in that group folder. All right, we're going to do the same thing with Big Fish, so I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call this layer Big Fish Detail. And hit OK. I'm going to hold Shift to select both of these layers, and then I'm going to go to my Layer menu button. We're going to go to New Group from Layers, and I'm going to call this Big Fish. And I'm going to give it a color. All right. We're going to do the same thing with plant left. So right click it, duplicate layer, and this is going to be detail. All right, I'm going to hold Shift with my left hand, select the other layer. Right there, go to New Group from Layers, blue, and hit OK. And same thing with plant right. Right click it, duplicate layer, call this detail. And I'm going to group those as well. So select both, go up here, go to New Group from Layers, and I'm going to call this plant right. Hit OK. And then same thing with bubbles. So go ahead and select it, right click it, duplicate layer, call this detail. All right, Shift with the left hand, hold it. Let's go to the New Layer Group button. And we're going to call this bubbles. And hit OK. All right, so we have a duplicate of each layer in there. So let me show you why we did that. I'm going to go ahead and hide all the layers except Little Fish, and then I'm going to expand the Little Fish folder. Now, the detail layer is going to be our focus right now. So because the detail layer is going to be the focus there, I'm going to hide the Little Fish bottom layer, and I'm going to make the detail layer active. What I want to do on this layer is get rid of all the white pixels within Little Fish, and the only thing I want showing is the black of the fish. So I'm going to get my magic wand tool, and I'm going to zoom in. This is my magic wand tool. All right, so I want you to look at tolerance right here, because the previous time I did this, I had tolerance set at 20, and that might have been a little high for the quality of this image because it was taking away some of my black outline and detail. So let's take that down to 5 and see if it yields a better result. So tolerance of 5, I'm going to click in the face right there, and I can delete the pixels, okay? I'm deleting the pixels. I'm going to do the same thing right there and go through this fish. Now, notice I have my Add to Selection button chosen. That allows me to make multiple selections at the same time before I hit the delete key. So I'm going through, making multiple selections, and hit delete. Now, do not click on the black line, or you'll delete those pixels and it'll start messing up your fish. So if that happens, hit Control Z a couple times, or Command Z a couple times to undo it. All right, so I'm done with that. So I clean that fish up, and I'm going to close that folder. So I clean that fish up. Now I'm going to go to the big fish, open that folder. I'm going to hide the bottom layer in that folder and get the select the big fish detail layer. The reason being is I want to go get the white pixels out of that layer as well. So I'm going to hit just like I did before. Go through there carefully, select the white pixels, hit backspace. Coach Kendall downstairs, he teaches image editing too. If he knew I was teaching you to delete pixels in Photoshop, he wouldn't be happy. But I'm trying to teach you color modes and dealing with color, and that's separate from masking. So I will make sure you're trained correctly if you're going to level 2 with masking techniques. And by that point, we won't be deleting any pixels. Have them all? I think I do. All right, so go ahead and let's show the bottom layer right there and collapse that folder. Did I do that? And do here and this layer too. You can show your bottom layer as well. All right, let me go to, which one was this? Well, that's plant left. I didn't rename it. Plant left. All right, so let's expand the plant left folder. And I'm going to hide the bottom layer there and select the plant detail and simply go through there and get rid of the white pixels. Alright, so that's good. I'm going to show that bottom layer again and collapse that folder. Let me go make the plant right visible, expand that folder, hide the bottom layer for this step, and make the top one active. Alright, get your magic wand tool, select the inside of the cactus. Alright, so we have the inside of the cactus, not cactus, look like a cactus, inside the plant deleted, so I'll show this one again. And let's make the bubble layer active. Alright, so bubble layer, let's expand it. Hide the bottom one, make the top one in there active, and let's delete those pixels in the bubbles. Okay, so those are now deleted. All right, and then show the bottom one. Okay, so let me show you what we're going to do. All right, so we'll start with the little fish right there. So let me Command and plus. And I'm going to make, let me zoom in one more time. All right, so we're on the little fish. I'm going to hide my detail layer on the top, okay? And then I'm going to, and you're not seeing anything, but then I'm going to select the little fish layer right there. So make that active, and we need to pick a couple colors for the foreground and background. So I will go, let me go teal and hit OK. Why is this not, what am I doing wrong? There we go. Teal color, and I'll go with purple. Teal or purple. All right, so I want to pull a gradient that's teal to purple. So number one, I'm going to get my gradient tool. So right where the paint bucket was, I'm going to grab that, get the gradient, and remember your options bar up here. This first drop down, make sure it's in basics, and that's your foreground and background color, and we want to pull a linear, which is this button right there, linear. So I'm going to do this incorrectly the first time, and then I'm going to show you how to do it correctly. So if I want to grab my gradient tool, and I'm focused on the fish, and I simply want to pull a gradient across the fish, and I start doing it, and let up, it's going to fill my whole canvas. All right? I don't want that, so let me hit Command and Z. The reason that happened is because it puts it on every pixel on the canvas, unless I hit this button right here. You see right next to the word lock on the top of the layer panel? Hit this little button, that's your lock transparent pixels. And now when you pull this across the fish, it fills only the pixels that have a color in it, not the transparent ones. So once I have that, it's now time to hit the eyeball there because there is the detail of my fish. And that's what gives me the detail. So let me collapse that folder right there and expand my big fish folder. Same thing, I'm going to hide the detail layer and select the bottommost layer. And let me just go teal to yellow. That looks good. So teal to yellow. This time I'm going to remember to lock my transparent pixels. So I hit that, and teal to yellow will go this direction, and we'll show our detail layer. Now we have that detail. Oops, looks like I messed something up back there. Oh, I know what it is. It's in this layer right here. So I forgot to remove the white from the detail layer. So let me get my magic wand. I'm on the correct layer. I select that and hit delete. Better. Okay, so Command minus. Let me collapse that folder. All right, let me go to the plant left. So expand that. Hide the detail layer. Make my bottom layer active. We're going to go light green to darker green. So hit the background color and we'll scroll up to dark greens. All right, so light green to dark green, gradients, foreground to background linear. Let me pull, I'm gonna pull straight up. Oops, forgot to lock my transparent pixel. So hit that, pull straight up, and that's what I have. Show your detail layer and you're good there. All right, let's collapse that. Expand plant right. Same steps, hide the detail layer, make the plant right active, lock these transparent pixels, and we're going to pull the same color across here but in different direction. So I'm going to pull from the bottom left up to the right, and then I'm going to show my detail layer, and that's what I have. And collapse that folder. Finally, let's show our bubbles layer. Same steps, hide the detail layer, make the bubble layer active. Let's go light blue to dark blue. All right, lock our transparent pixels, and let's pull straight up, okay? Let's hit Command Z, let's pull straight down. That looks better. All right, that looks good there. Let's, all right, those bubbles. Remember how we talked about a stroke in this chapter? Let's go ahead, oh, that's what I didn't do. I didn't show my detail layer, that's why I didn't like it. Now my detail layer is showing. Let me zoom in on this one. Did I not delete the white pixels in this? That one. So let me go to my detail layer, get my magic wand, click in there, hit backspace. There we go. That looks better. Command D. All right, that's down my business. All right, that looks good. Collapse that folder and let's bring the picture of the reef in there. So File, Place, Embedded. And I'm going to my desktop and I'm finding the picture of the reef. So Chapter 5. And there's my reef. Size is a little bigger. And commit it. And I'm going to drop it below my bubbles so I can see where I didn't want to put it in my bubbles. There. Now I put it there. Okay. So there's my reef. If I want to reduce the opacity of the reef just a little bit, I can do that as well. That was too much. All right. And then that's what I got. All right, I can also, remember we talked about adjustment layers in this chapter. Let me go to this little round button here, okay? And I'm gonna hit it. And let's go to brightness and contrast. Now, I want you to pay attention where this put this brightness and contrast on the layer panel. It put it just above reef because I had the reef layer active. Because it's just above reef, that is the only layer this adjust this. That's the only layer that's going to be affected by this brightness and contrast. So, oops, I'm sorry. So if I double click this right here, this little thumbnail icon next to brightness and contrast, it brings up the properties. And this is where I can adjust the brightness of the background image, okay? And the contrast as well. Let me take this up to 100 so you can see everything that's doing. So let me double click that. All right, it's adjusting the brightness and contrast, okay? Now, if I put this all the way up here above it, it's going to affect everything below it now. So now if I do brightness and contrast, the fish are affected and the reef's affected. Got it? Does that make sense? So I'm going to put it right there with the reef. It affects the background picture of the reef only, and that's it. Hope you guys had fun. Take care.